I was packing my late husband's old suitcase when my daughter-in-law Crystal stood in my bedroom doorway, arms crossed. "You have until sunset," she said, her voice cold as January frost. "This house is mine now, and I want you gone." My son Daniel had been in the ground for only 3 days. 3 days. And the woman he'd married was throwing me into the street like yesterday's garbage. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. How had my life collapsed so completely, so fast? My hands were shaking as I tried to fold one of Edward's old sweaters. Edward, my husband, had been gone for 8 years now. This house held 40 years of memories. Daniel had taken his first steps right there in the hallway. I'd taught him to read at the kitchen table. Edward and I had built our entire life here. "Crystal, please," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "This house belonged to Edward and me first. Daniel grew up here. Can we just talk about this?" She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was sharp and cruel, nothing like the sweet voice she'd used when Daniel first brought her home 2 years ago. "Talk? Oh, Zoe, there's nothing to talk about. You don't own this house anymore." "What do you mean?" Crystal pulled a folder from behind her back, thick with papers. She tossed it onto my bed with a satisfied smile. "See for yourself. Daniel transferred the deed entirely into my name 2 years ago. About 6 months after we got married, actually. It's all legal and recorded with the county." I grabbed the papers with trembling fingers. There it was, in black and white. The property deed for 247 Maple Street, transferred from Daniel Edward Hartley to Crystal Marie Hartley. Dated July 10th, 2 years prior. My son's signature was right there at the bottom. But why would he do this? The words came out choked. "He never told me. He never said anything. Because I convinced him you were getting too old to handle property ownership." Crystal examined her nails, casual as if we were discussing the weather. "I told him it was for your own good. That you were becoming forgetful, that managing a house was too much responsibility for someone your age." He believed every word. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. My own son had taken away my home without even telling me. Had he really thought I was incompetent? Had I missed signs that he'd lost faith in me? "I need time," I managed to say. "Just a few days to find an apartment, to figure out where to go." "No," Crystal's voice was flat. "I already called the movers. They'll be here in 20 minutes to help you pack. Well, to help you leave. You can take whatever fits in 2 suitcases. Everything else stays." 2 suitcases? "Crystal, I have a lifetime of belongings here. My mother's china, photo albums, furniture that belonged to Edward's parents. You can't just take everything." "I can, and I will. This is my house now. My things. You should have thought about this before you got old and useless." The cruelty in her words made me physically recoil. This was the woman my son had loved? The woman he'd chosen to spend his life with? Where was the grief? Daniel had been her husband. He'd died in a terrible car accident just 6 days ago. Shouldn't she be mourning? A truck pulled up outside. Through the window, I saw 2 large men climb out. They weren't gentle-looking movers. They looked like bouncers, intimidating and rough. "That's them," Crystal said cheerfully. "Better hurry up with your packing." The next 30 minutes were a nightmare. I grabbed what I could, my mind barely functioning. Clothes, my wedding photo, a few of Edward's things, my mother's jewelry box, Daniel's baby book. The men stood in the doorway of my bedroom, arms crossed, watching me like I was a criminal. I kept trying to take more, and Crystal kept vetoing it. "Those picture frames? No, those are nice. I'm keeping them. That quilt my grandmother made? Too bad, it matches my decor. Your books? Please, Zoe, I need the shelf space." I felt like I was being erased. 70 years of life reduced to 2 overstuffed suitcases. When I tried to go into Daniel's old room to get a few more of his childhood things, Crystal blocked the doorway. "Don't even think about it. That's going to be my home office." One of the men cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we need to get moving." Boss said to have her out by 6. It was 5:30. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky orange and pink. Beautiful and terrible all at once. They walked me to the door. Actually walked behind me as I wheeled my suitcases, as if I might try to run back inside. Neighbors were watching now. I saw Mrs. Patterson from next door peeking through her curtains. When she caught my eye, she quickly looked away, and the curtains fell closed. Mr. Walsh was getting his mail across the street. He glanced over, then hurried back inside his house. No one came to help. No one asked if I was okay. Crystal stood on the porch, my porch, the porch Edward had rebuilt with his own hands 15 years ago. She looked down at me standing on the sidewalk with my suitcases and smiled. "Oh, one more thing," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Daniel's will reading is in 2 weeks. Monday, October 23rd, at 10 in the morning. Sullivan and Associates downtown. Don't bother showing up, though. He made sure you'd get exactly what you deserve." She paused, her smile widening. Nothing. The door slammed shut. I heard the deadbolt slide into place. My own door, my own deadbolt. And I was locked out. I stood there on the sidewalk as darkness began to fall. My phone was in my purse. I pulled it out with shaking hands and called my sister Helen in Ohio. She'd know what to do. She'd help me. The phone rang 4 times before she picked up. "Zoe, is everything okay?" "Helen, I need help. Crystal just threw me out of the house. I have nowhere to go. Can I come stay with you for a while, just until I figure things out?" There was a long pause. Too long. "Zoe, let me call you back, okay? I need to talk to Jim, her husband." "Helen, please. It's getting dark and I'm standing on the street with 2 suitcases. I'll call you back in 10 minutes. I promise." The line went dead. I sat down on one of my suitcases. A police car drove by slowly. The officer looked right at me, then at the house, then drove on. Crystal had probably called them, told them to make sure I left the neighborhood. My phone rang. I grabbed it, desperate. "Helen? Zoe, I'm sorry. Jim says now isn't a good time. Maybe in a few months when things settle down." "A few months? Helen, I need help now. Today. I have nowhere to sleep tonight." "There are hotels, Zoe. Look, I have to go. We'll talk soon." She hung up. I sat there, in the growing darkness, alone. Truly, completely alone. My son was dead. My daughter-in-law had stolen my home. My sister had abandoned me. And I had $900 in my checking account to my name. I called a cab. When it arrived, the driver helped me load my suitcases. "Where to?" he asked. "I didn't even know. A motel," I finally said. "Something cheap." He nodded and drove me to the edge of town, to a place called the Starlight Motor Lodge. The sign was half burned out. It read Starlight Mo, or Loge. The building looked like it hadn't been updated since 1975. But it was $55 a night, and the man at the desk didn't ask questions. I wheeled my suitcases into room 112. It smelled like mildew and old cigarette smoke. The carpet was stained. The bedspread had burns in it, but it had a bed and a door that locked. I sat on the edge of that bed and finally let myself cry. Not quiet tears, but deep, body-shaking sobs. I cried for Daniel. I cried for Edward. I cried for the life I'd lost. I cried until I had nothing left. Then I lay down in my clothes and stared at the water-stained ceiling, wondering how I was going to survive. I woke up the next morning disoriented, forgetting for a moment where I was. Then it all came rushing back. The eviction. Crystal's cruelty. The motel room. I felt sick. After a shower in a bathroom with suspicious stains and weak water pressure, I got dressed and tried to think practically. I needed to access my money, figure out my finances, see exactly what I was working with. The motel had watery coffee in the lobby. I poured myself a cup and walked the 6 blocks to First National Bank, the same bank Edward and I had used for 42 years. I'd been coming to this branch since Daniel was in diapers. Gerald Thomas, the branch manager, greeted me at the door. We'd chatted hundreds of times over the years. He knew about Edward's death, about Daniel. His face showed discomfort when he saw me. "Mrs. Hartley, I'm so sorry about Daniel. Such a tragedy." "Thank you, Gerald. I need to access my savings account. I'm having some financial difficulties, and I need to move some money around." His face went from uncomfortable to pained. "Let me pull up your account," Come to my office. We walked through the bank. I noticed the tellers watching me, whispering. Word had clearly spread about what happened. Gerald sat at his computer and typed. His fingers paused. He cleared his throat. Mrs. Hartley, I'm looking at your savings account here. Account number ending in 4723. That's right. It should have around $43,000 in it. Maybe a bit more with interest. He turned the monitor so I could see. The balance showed $12.37. My vision went blurry. That's not possible. There must be a mistake. I'm afraid not. There was a withdrawal of $42,987 on June 24th. That was 2 days after Daniel's death. Who withdrew it? I didn't withdraw anything. Gerald clicked through screens. Crystal Hartley. She was added to the account as a joint owner on January 15th of this year. Daniel signed the authorization paperwork himself. I remember because he came in with Crystal. She told me it was for emergency purposes, in case you needed help accessing your funds as you got older. The room tilted. So she could just take everything? Legally? I'm afraid so. As a joint owner, she had full access to the entire account. Legally, that money belonged to both of you. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Hartley. If I'd known there was an issue, I would have called you. But everything was done properly, with the right signatures and authorizations. $43,000, gone. That was everything Edward and I had saved. That was the money from selling our share of the business when Edward got sick. That was supposed to last me the rest of my life. Is there anything else I can help you with? Gerald asked quietly. I shook my head and walked out of the bank in a daze. On the sidewalk, I had to lean against the brick wall to catch my breath. A panic attack was building in my chest, pressure and pain, and the feeling that I couldn't get enough air. I made it back to the motel somehow, sat on the bed, counted my money, $900 in checking, $55 per night for the motel. I had 16 days before I was completely broke. Maybe less if I needed to eat. I needed help, real help. Someone who could tell me what to do. I called my sister Helen again. This time her voice was different when she answered. Distant, cold. Helen, something terrible has happened. Crystal stole all my money. $43,000 from my savings account. I need help, legal help. I don't know what to do. Zoe. Helen's voice was careful, measured. Crystal called me yesterday, after we talked. What? Why would she call you? She told me about your problems, about the pills you've been taking, about Daniel having to take control of your finances because you weren't competent anymore. She said you've been having episodes. Confusion, memory loss. She said she's been trying to help you, but you won't accept it. That's not true. Helen, you know me. Have I ever sounded confused to you? There are no pills. There's no incompetence. She's lying. I don't know what to believe anymore, Zoe. Crystal sounded very genuine, very concerned. And she's family now. Was family. You know what I mean. I'm your sister. I'm your family. I think you need professional help. Maybe you should check yourself into a facility. Somewhere they can help you with whatever you're going through. Jim and I talked, and we think it's for the best if we maintain some distance right now, at least until you get yourself sorted out. Helen, please. I'm not crazy. I'm not confused. Crystal is manipulating everyone. I have to go, Zoe. Please take care of yourself. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, stunned. Crystal had gotten to Helen, had convinced her that I was the problem. How many other people had she called? I decided to try Dorothy, my friend from church. We'd been in the same prayer group for 12 years. If anyone would believe me, it would be Dorothy. She answered on the third ring. Zoe. Not hi or how are you. Just my name, flat and disapproving. Dorothy, I need to talk to you about something. After what you did at Daniel's wake, showing up drunk, making a scene, I don't think we have anything to talk about. Drunk? Dorothy, I wasn't drunk. I didn't have a single drop of alcohol that day. I was grieving. I was crying. Who told you I was drunk? Everyone saw you, Zoe. Stumbling around, slurring your words. Crystal had to help you to a chair. It was embarrassing. For you and for Daniel's memory. That's not what happened. I wasn't drunk. I was in shock, Yes. I was devastated. But I wasn't drunk. Dorothy, you know me. Have you ever seen me drink excessively? I thought I knew you, but people change. Grief can make people do strange things. I think you should stay away from church for a while, until you get yourself together. She hung up. Crystal had poisoned everyone against me, systematically, deliberately. She'd created a story where I was the problem, the crazy old woman who couldn't be trusted, and everyone believed her. I lay back on the motel bed and stared at the ceiling, counted the water stains. 17. Tried to think about what to do next. My purse was sitting on the chair. I got up and started going through it, looking for nothing in particular, just needing something to do with my hands. That's when I found the paper, folded small, and shoved into the side pocket. I didn't remember putting it there. I unfolded it. It was a photocopy of a legal document, a caregiver agreement. It stated that Zoe Marie Hartley, age 67, had been diagnosed with moderate dementia and required a full-time caregiver. It named Crystal Marie Hartley as the primary caregiver with full power of attorney. It was dated 8 months ago. It was notarized. And there, at the bottom, was a signature that looked like mine. But I'd never signed this. I'd never seen this before. I didn't have dementia. I'd never been diagnosed with anything except high blood pressure, which was controlled with medication. This was forgery. It had to be, but it looked real. It looked legal. Would anyone believe me if I said I'd never signed it? I needed a lawyer. Someone who could help me fight this. Someone who could prove that Crystal was lying, stealing, manipulating. I used the motel's phone book, the pages yellow and outdated, and looked up estate lawyers. Found one named Patrick Sullivan with an office downtown. Sullivan and Associates. The name sounded familiar. I called the number. A receptionist answered. Sullivan and Associates, how may I help you? I need to speak to a lawyer about my son's estate. About fraud and forgery. My name is Zoe Hartley. There was a pause. Oh, Mrs. Hartley, we've been expecting your call. You have? Yes, ma'am. Crystal Hartley contacted us several days ago. She mentioned you might be calling, that you might be confused about your son Daniel's will. We have his will here. The reading is scheduled for Monday, October 23rd at 10 in the morning. You're certainly welcome to attend. My heart sank. Crystal called you? Yes, ma'am. She wanted to make sure we were aware of your condition, your memory difficulties. She said you might make accusations or become upset. She seemed very concerned about you. Even the lawyers thought I was crazy. I'll be there, I said quietly. For the will reading. Of course. I should warn you, though, that the contents are quite clear. Mr. Sullivan wanted me to let you know in advance, so you're not surprised, but you're welcome to attend. The pity in her voice was unmistakable. I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed, counted my money again. After 4 nights at the motel, I'd have $700 left. The will reading was in 10 days. 10 days to survive. 10 days until I found out exactly how thoroughly my son had cut me out of his life. 10 days until Crystal's final victory. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, looked at myself in the spotted mirror. I looked old, tired, defeated. But somewhere under that exhaustion, I felt a spark of anger. Crystal thought she'd won. She thought she'd destroyed me completely. But I was still here, still standing, still fighting. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to prove the truth. I was going to make someone listen. I had 10 days to figure out how. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. If Crystal had created fake medical records to make me look incompetent, then I needed real medical records to prove I was fine. I needed documentation from someone who knew me, someone who could testify that I was mentally sound. Dr. Martinez had been my physician for 15 years. He'd seen me through Edward's death, through knee surgery 3 years ago, through every routine checkup and minor illness. He knew me. He would help. I walked the 1.5 miles to his office, saving money on cab fare. My knees ached by the time I got there. The waiting room was full. The receptionist, a young woman named Ashley, looked surprised to see me. Mrs. Hartley, do you have an appointment? No, but I need to see Dr. Martinez. It's important. He's booked solid today. Can I schedule you for next week? I'll wait, however long it takes. Please, Ashley. It's urgent. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Have a seat. I'll let him know you're here. I sat in that waiting room for 3 hours. Watched parents with sick children come and go. Watched an elderly man with a cane get called back. Watched the magazines on the table blur together as my eyes grew tired. Finally, at 2 in the afternoon, Ashley called my name. Mrs. Hartley, Dr. Martinez can see you now. His office was familiar and comforting. Diplomas on the wall. A photo of his wife and 3 daughters on his desk. He stood when I entered, concern on his face. Zoe, what's going on? Ashley said you seemed upset. I sat down and everything poured out. The eviction, the stolen money, the fake caregiver agreement, Crystal's campaign to make everyone think I was incompetent. I talked for 10 minutes straight, barely pausing for breath. When I finished, Dr. Martinez was quiet for a moment. Then he turned to his computer. Zoe, I need to show you something. He pulled up my medical records on the screen. According to my files, you've been here 4 times in the past 10 months. February 7th, April 22nd, July 9th, September 3rd. But I haven't been here since January for my annual checkup. That was the last time I saw you. He clicked through screens, and his face grew more concerned. These notes indicate you came in with Crystal. Each visit, you showed signs of increasing confusion and memory loss, difficulty remembering names, getting lost while driving, forgetting what day it was. I apparently prescribed Aricept, a medication for dementia, after the April visit. I never took any medication for dementia. I never had those visits. Dr. Martinez, you know me. Do I seem confused to you right now? He studied me carefully. No, you seem completely lucid and coherent. But these records, Zoe, they're in the system. They have my signature on them. Someone examined you and documented these symptoms. Someone pretending to be me, or someone falsifying records, but it wasn't me. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. This is a serious accusation. If someone created false medical records, that's fraud. That's potentially criminal. I know. That's why I'm here. I need you to document that I'm mentally sound. I need you to test me, to prove I don't have dementia, to write a letter stating that these records are questionable. He nodded slowly. I can do that. Let me run some cognitive tests right now. For the next 45 minutes, Dr. Martinez put me through a battery of tests. Memory tests, problem-solving tests, clock drawing, word recall, questions about current events, about my personal history, about basic facts. I passed everything perfectly. Your cognitive function is completely normal for your age, he said, reviewing the results. There's no indication of dementia or any memory disorder. I'll write a letter documenting today's exam and noting the discrepancy in your medical records. But Zoe, changing official medical records requires an investigation. It could take months. And it might not help with your immediate situation. What about the will? Can your letter help prove that I'm competent? I'll state your current cognitive status, but I have to be honest with you. If the will was written and executed legally, my letter might not make a difference. Wills are generally very difficult to contest. He printed the letter and handed it to me. It was something, not much, but something. I left his office and walked toward downtown. I was exhausted, but I had one more stop to make, the police station. Lieutenant Barnes was the officer on duty when I walked in. He was in his 50s, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I need to report fraud and identity theft, I said. He sighed and pulled out a form. Name? I explained everything again. The stolen money, the forged documents, the fake medical records, the systematic destruction of my reputation. He wrote things down, but his expression grew more skeptical with each detail. Mrs. Hartley, I hear what you're saying, but here's the problem. Your daughter-in-law was a legal joint owner of that bank account. That means the money belonged to both of you. She had every right to withdraw it. But my son only added her because she lied to him. She manipulated him. Can you prove that? I couldn't. I had no proof. Just my word against hers. What about the forged caregiver agreement? Do you have evidence it's forged? A handwriting analysis? Witness testimony? I didn't. Mrs. Hartley, this sounds like a civil matter between family members. Estate disputes happen all the time. You should work it out with lawyers, not police. If you have concrete evidence of forgery or fraud, bring it to me. But right now, all I'm hearing is a family disagreement. She's destroying my life. I understand you're upset. Losing a child is devastating, and then dealing with estate issues on top of that. But the legal system is set up to handle these things through civil courts and probate. My suggestion is, you attend the will reading and see what happens. Sometimes these situations work themselves out. He slid the form across the desk. I hadn't signed it. He'd already decided not to file a report. I walked out of the police station feeling smaller than ever. No one would help me. No one would believe me. Crystal had covered every angle. I went back to the motel and counted my money again. $53 left after paying for another night. I needed to eat something. Hadn't had a real meal in 2 days. But food cost money. I found a church 3 blocks away that advertised free community meals on Tuesday evenings. It was Tuesday. I went. The meal was simple. Spaghetti, green beans, bread, water, but it was hot and it was free. I sat at a long table with other people who looked as lost as I felt. Homeless people. Families struggling to make ends meet. Elderly folks living on Social Security. I was one of them now. As I was finishing my meal, someone approached my table. Zoe? I looked up. Marcus Allen. Daniel's best friend from childhood. They'd met in 3rd grade, been inseparable through high school. Marcus had been Daniel's best man at his wedding to Crystal. What was he doing here? Marcus, hi. I volunteer here on Tuesdays. Serving food. I saw you sitting here and I couldn't believe it. He sat down across from me. What's going on? Why are you at a free meal service? Pride warred with desperation. Desperation won. Crystal kicked me out of my house, took all my money. I'm staying at a motel and I'm running out of cash. His face showed genuine shock. What? That's insane. Why would she do that? Because she's not who we thought she was. Marcus leaned closer, his voice dropping. I need to tell you something. After the funeral, I've been hearing things. Crystal told everyone you refused to come. That you were too upset. That you didn't want to face people. But I saw you there, Zoe. You were sitting in the back row, crying. She made it seem like you weren't there at all. She's been lying about me to everyone. Made people think I'm incompetent, drunk, mentally ill. No one will help me. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he said, about 3 months before Daniel died, he came to see me. It was strange because we hadn't talked much since he got married. Crystal didn't like him spending time with old friends. But he showed up at my apartment one night, looked terrible, scared almost. My heart started beating faster. What did he say? He asked me if I knew any lawyers. Said he needed someone who specialized in protecting assets. He said he'd made a terrible mistake and needed to fix it before it was too late. I gave him a few names, but he wouldn't tell me details. He just kept saying he'd been so stupid that he should have seen it coming. Then, 2 weeks later, he died in that car accident. Do you think it was really an accident? Marcus looked uncomfortable. The police said he ran a red light. That he seemed distracted. But Daniel was always a careful driver. I've wondered. I haven't wanted to say anything because it sounds crazy. But I've wondered. We sat there in the church basement, surrounded by the quiet conversations of other diners, and I felt something shift. Maybe Daniel hadn't betrayed me. Maybe he'd realized the truth about Crystal before he died. Maybe he'd tried to fix things. The will reading is Monday morning, I said. Crystal told me not to bother coming, said Daniel made sure I'd get nothing. You should go anyway. You should hear it for yourself. Marcus, I have $8 to my name. If the will leaves me nothing, I'll be homeless by the end of the week. He reached into his wallet and pulled out 2 20s, handed them to me. It's all I can spare right now, but take it, and I'll be at that will reading. You shouldn't have to face this alone. I took the money because I had no choice. Thank you. Daniel was my best friend. He was a good man. If something was wrong, if Crystal manipulated him, then we owe it to him to find out the truth. I went back to the motel that night with a tiny spark of hope. Maybe I had one ally. Maybe Daniel had tried to make things right. Maybe Monday would bring answers instead of just another loss. But as I lay in that uncomfortable bed, my chest started to hurt. Sharp pains. My heart was pounding too fast. Stress and grief and not eating properly and not taking my blood pressure medication because it was back at the house. I took deep breaths and tried to calm down. The pain didn't stop. It got worse. I must have fallen asleep eventually, because I woke up Sunday morning with sunlight streaming through the thin curtains. My chest still hurt. My left arm felt tingly. I sat up too fast and the room spun. This wasn't stress. This was something worse. I tried to stand and my legs buckled. I made it to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, but the dizziness got worse. I needed help. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The operator answered immediately. 911, what's your emergency? I think I'm having a heart attack. Chest pain, left arm tingling, dizzy. What's your location? Starlight Motor Lodge, room 112. Stay on the line. Ambulance is on the way. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone pressed to my ear, and waited. The operator kept asking me questions. Was I breathing? Could I talk? The pain was getting worse, spreading across my chest, like someone was sitting on me. The ambulance arrived 12 minutes later. 2 paramedics, a man and a woman, burst into the room. They got me on a stretcher, put an oxygen mask on my face, started an IV. I heard words like elevated heart rate and blood pressure, 190/110, and possible cardiac event. The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and pain and fear. I kept thinking, I can't die now. Not before the will reading. Not before I find out the truth. At the emergency room, doctors and nurses swarmed around me. EKG, blood tests, chest X-ray. I lay on a gurney in a curtained area and tried to focus on breathing. A young doctor came in, looked at my chart, looked at me. Mrs. Hartley, you didn't have a full heart attack, but you had a serious cardiac episode. Your heart is under significant stress. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. When did you last take your blood pressure medication? 6 days ago. I got evicted from my house, and the medication was there. I couldn't get it. The doctor's expression shifted from clinical to concerned. You're homeless? Yes. He made notes on his chart. We need to keep you overnight for observation. Make sure your heart stabilizes. I'll get you a prescription for your blood pressure medication before you're discharged. I can't afford to stay overnight. I don't have insurance. He looked at my chart again, then at a computer screen. According to our records, you should be covered under your son Daniel's insurance through his employer. Let me have the billing department check. 10 minutes later, a woman from billing came in. Middle-aged, kind eyes, but her news wasn't good. Mrs. Hartley, you were removed from Daniel's insurance plan 8 months ago. The employer shows that Daniel submitted paperwork taking you off as a dependent. You're currently uninsured. 8 months ago. Right around the time that fake caregiver agreement was dated. Crystal had been planning this for a long time. How much will this cost? I asked. Without insurance, an overnight stay in the ER plus tests and treatment will be somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000. We can work out a payment plan. $5,000. I had $48. I need to leave. The billing woman looked alarmed. Mrs. Hartley, the doctor said you need observation. I can't afford it. I need to go. The doctor came back in, heard the conversation. If you leave against medical advice, you could have another cardiac episode. A fatal one this time. I don't have a choice. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll discharge you AMA, but please, fill this prescription immediately. And if you have any chest pain at all, call 911. Don't wait. He handed me a prescription for blood pressure medication and an antibiotic. The cheapest generic versions would still cost around $60 at the pharmacy. I got dressed in the hospital bathroom, my hands still shaking. When I came out, the billing woman was waiting with paperwork. I signed forms acknowledging I owed the hospital thousands of dollars, added to the list of debts I couldn't pay. I called the motel from the hospital phone. The manager answered. Starlight Motor Lodge. This is Zoe Hartley, room 112. I had a medical emergency and I'm at the hospital. I'll be back this afternoon to pay for another night. Ma'am, checkout was noon. You're not here, And you didn't pay in advance. I'm clearing out the room. Please, my things are in there. My suitcases. Everything I own. Should have thought of that before you skipped out. You still owe for last night plus fees. If you want your stuff back, you need to pay the full balance. $85. Can you just hold my things until tomorrow? I'll have money tomorrow. Not how it works. You owe $85. Come up with it by 6 tonight or your stuff gets donated to Goodwill. He hung up. I sat on a bench outside the hospital and tried not to cry. Everything I owned was in those suitcases. Photos of Daniel, Edward's wedding ring, my mother's jewelry, my whole life. My phone rang. Marcus. Zoe, I heard you were in the hospital. Are you okay? Small towns. Word traveled fast. How did you know? I know one of the paramedics. She mentioned picking up someone from the Starlight. I put 2 and 2 together. What happened? My heart. Stress. They wanted to keep me overnight, but I can't afford it. Where are you now? Outside the hospital. The motel kicked me out. I have until 6 to come up with $85 or they're donating my things to charity. Stay there. I'm coming to get you. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later in an old pickup truck. He drove me to the motel, paid my bill with his own money even though I protested. The manager grudgingly handed over my suitcases, but the damage was done. Someone had already gone through them. Things were missing. Edward's watch, some of the jewelry. The manager claimed they were never in there. Marcus helped me load my things into his truck. You can't stay here anymore, Zoe. This place isn't safe. I can't afford anywhere else. Listen, I have a friend who runs a homeless shelter. I'll call and see if they have any emergency beds available. We drove to the shelter. It was a converted warehouse, clean but institutional. Rows of cots, communal bathrooms, rules posted on every wall. The director, a tired-looking woman named Susan, met us at the desk. I can put you on the waiting list, she said after I explained my situation. But we're at capacity. We have a 2-week wait for beds. 2 weeks. The will reading was tomorrow. Susan handed me a packet of information. There are other resources, churches that serve meals, food banks, day shelters where you can go during the daytime to get out of the weather. It was late October. Nights were getting cold. Marcus and I sat in his truck in the parking lot. You can't live on the street, he said. I don't have a choice. Unless the will reading tomorrow changes something. What time is it? 10 in the morning. Sullivan and Associates downtown. I'll pick you up at 9:30. Where will you be? I looked around. There was a park 2 blocks away. I'll wait at the park. Marcus pulled out his wallet again, took out everything in it. $30. Take this. Get something to eat. Stay somewhere safe tonight. Marcus, you've already done too much. Daniel would want me to help. He'd want someone looking out for you. I took the money because I was out of options. Marcus dropped me off downtown. I used $15 of his money to buy actual food from a deli. A sandwich, an apple, a bottle of water. It was the best meal I'd had in days. I sat on a bench and ate slowly, trying to make it last. As the sun set, I realized I had no plan for the night. I couldn't afford another motel. The shelters were full. I walked through downtown, looking for somewhere safe. Found a 24-hour diner that didn't seem to mind people sitting for hours. Ordered coffee for $2. Nursed it for as long as I could. Around midnight, the manager asked me to leave. Sorry, ma'am, but if you're not ordering food, I can't let you stay. I went back outside. It was cold, probably 45 degrees. I found a spot near the library, where there was an overhang, some protection from the wind. Put on every piece of clothing I could from my suitcase. Used the suitcase as a pillow. Tried to sleep. I couldn't. Every sound made me jump. Every person walking by could be dangerous. I was a 67-year-old woman alone on the street with everything I owned. At some point I must have dozed off because I jerked awake to sunlight. Monday morning. The will reading was in 3 hours. I went to the public library when it opened at 9. Used the bathroom to wash my face, fix my hair. I looked terrible. Exhausted, wrinkled clothes, dark circles under my eyes. But it was the best I could do. Marcus picked me up at the park at 9:30 as promised. Did you sleep? Not really. After this is over, We'll figure something out. I promise. We drove to the law office in silence. The building was nice, professional, glass and steel. Sullivan and Associates occupied the third floor. In the lobby, other people sat waiting. Expensive suits, designer handbags. They looked at me with obvious pity. I looked like what I was, a homeless woman, defeated. The receptionist offered me water. Spoke to me slowly and loudly, the way people talk to children or the very old. "Mrs. Hartley, would you like some water?" I took the water and sat down. My chest hurt again. Stress. I tried to breathe slowly, tried to stay calm. At 9:55, Crystal walked in. She looked like $1 million. Black designer dress that probably cost more than I used to make in a month. Diamond earrings, perfect hair and makeup. She carried a leather bag that screamed wealth. She was already spending Daniel's money. She saw me immediately. Her face lit up with cruel satisfaction. She walked right over to where I was sitting and stood above me, making sure everyone in the lobby could hear. "You actually came. How pathetic." She laughed, a tinkling sound. "I made sure you'd be left with zero. Daniel knew what you were, a burden, a liability. This will is going to confirm what everyone already knows. You don't deserve anything." People in the lobby were staring now. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others watched like it was entertainment. Marcus stood up and positioned himself next to me. His presence was solid, supportive. Crystal's eyes narrowed when she saw him, but she didn't say anything. A young woman came out from the back. "Mrs. Crystal Hartley and Mrs. Zoe Hartley? Mr. Sullivan will see you now." As we walked down the hallway toward the conference room, Crystal leaned close to me. Her voice was a vicious whisper that only I could hear. "I already know what the will says. I helped Daniel write it. You get nothing. Not the house, not the money, not even a photo. And here's something you don't know." She paused, her smile sharp as glass. "That car accident? Daniel was coming home from a lawyer's office when it happened. He was upset, distracted. I'd just told him I was pregnant. He was so shocked he drove right through that red light. So really, his death is partially your fault too. If you'd been a better mother, he wouldn't have married someone like me." Her words were like knives. She couldn't really be pregnant. It had to be a lie. But the way she said it, so casual and cruel, made me doubt everything. We entered the conference room. It was large, with a long table. Patrick Sullivan sat at the head. He was late 50s, gray hair, stern expression. His assistant sat next to him, ready to take notes. Crystal sat across from me, smiling. Marcus sat slightly behind me, a quiet support. My heart was pounding, my chest hurt. This was it, the final blow. The moment where I'd find out exactly how completely Daniel had cut me from his life. I closed my eyes and prepared for the worst. Mr. Sullivan cleared his throat and opened a thick folder in front of him. "Good morning. I'm Patrick Sullivan, and I'll be reading the last will and testament of Daniel Edward Hartley, deceased. This will is dated March 15th of this year, witnessed and properly executed. March 15th. Only 6 months ago. 3 months before Daniel died. Before we begin," Sullivan continued, "I need to remind everyone that interruptions are not permitted during the reading. Please hold all questions and comments until I've finished." Crystal practically glowed with anticipation. I felt numb. Sullivan began reading in a formal, measured tone. "I, Daniel Edward Hartley, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking all previous wills and codicils." The words washed over me. Legal phrases, formal language. Then we got to the actual bequests. Article 2, Real Property. I hereby bequeath my primary residence located at 247 Maple Street to my wife, Crystal Marie Hartley, to have and to hold in fee simple absolute. My heart sank. The house was hers. Officially, legally hers. Article 3. Personal Property. I hereby bequeath my vehicle, a 2022 Honda Accord, to my wife Crystal Marie Hartley. All personal belongings, furniture, and household items located at the residence shall also pass to Crystal Marie Hartley. Crystal actually laughed out loud, a short, triumphant sound. Sullivan looked up sharply. "Mrs. Hartley, I asked for no interruptions. She waved her hand dismissively, but settled back in her chair, smiling. Article 4. Financial accounts. My checking account at First National Bank shall pass to Crystal Marie Hartley. Every word was another nail in my coffin. I'd lost everything. Crystal had been right. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder, squeezed gently, trying to offer comfort when there was none to give. Sullivan paused, turned a page, and continued. However, that one word made Crystal sit up straighter. However, there are additional provisions that must be read. Article 5. Business assets. My breath caught. The business. I'd forgotten about the business. Edward had started Hartley and Parker Technologies 40 years ago with his partner Thomas Parker. When Edward died, Daniel inherited his 50% share. I'd assumed that would go to Crystal too. Daniel Edward Hartley held a 50% ownership stake in Hartley and Parker Technologies, a software development company incorporated in the state of Delaware. After consultation with a certified business appraiser, the current value of this company is $3.7 million. Crystal leaned forward, her eyes bright with greed. $3.7 million. Her share would be worth $1.85 million. Sullivan continued reading. I hereby bequeath my 50% ownership stake in Hartley and Parker Technologies in its entirety to my mother, Zoe Marie Hartley. The room went silent. Crystal's face went white. What? Mrs. Hartley, please. Sullivan's voice was firm. No, that's not right. That's not what he said. We discussed this. He told me everything would go to me. Everything. Sullivan kept reading as if she hadn't spoken. This bequest includes all voting rights, dividend distributions, and corporate decision-making authority. Zoe Marie Hartley shall maintain active voting rights and may not sell or transfer these shares for a period of 5 years, ensuring the continued stability of the company. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The business. Daniel left me the business. Furthermore, Sullivan continued, the company operational account at Commerce Bank, currently holding $620,000, shall be managed jointly by Zoe Marie Hartley and Thomas Parker, with both signatures required for withdrawals exceeding $10,000. Crystal stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. This is wrong. This can't be right. Daniel promised me everything. Mrs. Hartley, sit down or I will have security remove you. She sat, but her face was red, her hands shaking with rage. Sullivan turned another page. Article 6. Life insurance policies. Daniel Edward Hartley held 2 life insurance policies. The first, through his employer Metrotech Solutions, for $500,000, lists Crystal Marie Hartley as the primary beneficiary. This policy shall be paid to Crystal Marie Hartley, as indicated. Crystal's expression shifted slightly. $500,000. That was something. The second policy, Sullivan continued, held privately through Liberty Life Insurance Company for $750,000, lists Zoe Marie Hartley as the primary beneficiary. This policy shall be paid to Zoe Marie Hartley, as indicated. $750,000. I would get $750,000. That's not possible, Crystal said, her voice shaking. He told me about the life insurance. He said it was all for me. $500,000, he said. That's all he had. Apparently he had more, Sullivan said dryly. He pulled out a separate envelope. Article 7. Letter of explanation. Daniel requested that the following letter be read aloud during the will reading. I'll read it now. Crystal gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Sullivan opened the envelope and began to read Daniel's words, his voice through the lawyer's mouth. To whom it may concern. I have become aware that I have made terrible errors in judgment regarding my mother's care and my wife's character. If you are reading this, I have either died or become incapacitated before I could fully rectify my mistakes. Crystal's face went from angry to panicked. I discovered 3 months ago that my wife Crystal has been systematically defrauding my mother. She forged documents. She created fake medical records. She manipulated me with lies. I was a fool. I believed her when she said my mother was declining mentally. I believed her when she said Mom needed protection from herself. I signed papers I should never have signed. I gave Crystal access she should never have had. Sullivan's voice was steady, professional, but the words hit like bombs. I have spent the last 3 months investigating. I hired a private detective. I obtained evidence. I discovered that Crystal has done this before, in Nevada, to another elderly woman named Grace Holloway. She is a professional con artist who targets families for financial gain. A gasp came from someone in the hallway. Sullivan's assistant was listening, her eyes wide. I have tried to reverse the damage Crystal has done. I changed my will. I gathered evidence. I went to the police. But Crystal is smart. She watches everything. She controls my accounts. She monitors my movements. I fear she has become dangerous. I fear for my mother's safety, and perhaps my own. Crystal was shaking her head. He was paranoid. Crazy. This isn't real. Sullivan kept reading. I have documented all evidence of Crystal's fraud in a safe deposit box at First National Bank, box number 447. The key is with my lawyer, Patrick Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan has been instructed to provide copies of this evidence to the district attorney's office upon my death. Sullivan looked up. I fulfilled that instruction 1 week ago. The district attorney has all the evidence. Crystal stood up suddenly. You can't do this. This is a lie. All of it. Daniel wasn't in his right mind when he wrote this. He was examined by 2 psychiatrists as part of the will preparation, Sullivan said calmly. Both certified he was of sound mind. Those reports are part of the record. Then his mother manipulated him. She got to him. She made him think these things. She's the crazy one, not me. Sullivan began reading again. Mother, I am so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have protected you from her. Every document I signed that gave Crystal access to your accounts, every paper that made her your caregiver, every lie I believed about your mental state, it was all her manipulation. I was weak. I was stupid. I let her isolate me from you, from my friends, from anyone who might have made me see the truth sooner. Tears were streaming down my face. I couldn't stop them. I have tried to reverse as much as I can legally. The house deed will be difficult to undo. I signed it before I knew what she was. But I've protected the business, the one thing Dad built that represents our family's legacy. I've protected the life insurance. I've secured evidence of her crimes. If anything happens to me before I can finish fixing this, please know it was not an accident. Please know I love you. Please know I'm sorry. Fight, Mom. Survive this. Make her pay for what she's done. The letter ended. Sullivan folded it carefully and set it aside. Crystal was standing now, backing toward the door. This is insane. You're all insane. I'm his widow. I have rights. You can't just take everything away from me based on some paranoid delusions. Sullivan's voice was ice cold. Mrs. Hartley, the will is legal and binding. You have the right to contest it in court, but I should warn you that doing so will be expensive and based on the evidence your late husband compiled, likely unsuccessful. I'll contest it. I'll fight this. I'll sue all of you. That is your right. However, I have one more piece of information. Sullivan pulled out another document. Before he died, Daniel met with me to discuss his concerns about you. He suspected you were planning something. He was afraid. He expressed concern that you might try to harm him or his mother. That's ridiculous. In his notes, which are part of his file, he documented several incidents, his brake lines being tampered with in February, finding rat poison in the kitchen that he never purchased, his coffee tasting strange multiple times. He was documenting everything. Crystal's face had gone from red to white. He was paranoid, seeing threats that weren't there. Sullivan opened another folder. The police have Daniel's vehicle. They've been conducting an investigation into his death. Would you like to know what they found? I don't have to listen to this. His brake lines had been cut. Not worn, not broken from the accident. Deliberately severed with a cutting tool. The accident that killed your husband was not an accident. It was attempted murder. The room erupted. Crystal lunged across the table, trying to grab the documents. You're lying. All of you are lying. Daniel loved me. He wouldn't write these things. This will is fake. Security guards rushed in. 2 large men who'd clearly been waiting just outside the door. I worked too hard for this, Crystal screamed as they grabbed her arms. I spent 2 years setting this up. That money is mine. Mine! She'd just confessed. In front of witnesses. In front of a lawyer recording everything. Sullivan stood, his expression grim. Mrs. Crystal Hartley, I feel obligated to inform you that I've already provided copies of Daniel's evidence to the district attorney's office as requested. They've been building a case against you. Based on what you just said, I imagine they'll be contacting you very shortly. I suggest you obtain legal counsel. Crystal's face changed from rage to terror. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time with something other than contempt. She saw me crying, saw Marcus standing behind me, saw the lawyer's cold expression. She realized she'd lost. Her eyes rolled back, her knees buckled. She collapsed to the floor in a dead faint. "Call an ambulance," Sullivan said calmly to his assistant. Then he turned to me, his expression softening just slightly. "Mrs. Hartley, I'm very sorry for your loss. Your son loved you deeply. He spent his last 3 months trying to protect you. I'm sorry he didn't have more time to fix everything, but he did his best to ensure you'd be taken care of." I couldn't speak, could only sit there crying while paramedics were called for Crystal. Marcus squeezed my shoulder. "You're going to be okay. It's over. You won." But it didn't feel like winning. My son was still dead. He'd still been murdered. The woman he'd loved had killed him for money. I'd lost everything that mattered and gained back only things. Still, as paramedics loaded an unconscious Crystal onto a stretcher, as police officers arrived to ask questions, as Sullivan explained that I'd need to come back to sign paperwork and discuss next steps, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. Daniel had tried to save me. He'd left me a way forward, and now, finally, the truth was out. The rest of Monday passed in a blur. After the paramedics took Crystal away, police arrived to take statements. Detective Barnes, the same officer who'd dismissed me at the station, looked genuinely apologetic as he took my information. "Mrs. Hartley, I owe you an apology. We should have listened more carefully, based on the evidence Mr. Sullivan has provided, and Mrs. Crystal Hartley's statements today. We're preparing charges of elder fraud, forgery, identity theft, and grand larceny. We're also reopening the investigation into your son's death as a possible homicide." Possible. They said possible, but we all knew the truth. Sullivan invited Marcus and me to a private office after the police left. He showed me more documents, files Daniel had compiled, bank statements showing Crystal's systematic theft, copies of forged signatures on documents, including that caregiver agreement, emails between Crystal and someone named Rick discussing the scheme in detail. They'd called it Operation Golden Goose. Daniel hired a private investigator, Sullivan explained. The investigator found evidence that Crystal had done this before in Nevada. She married an elderly widower named Harold Holloway, isolated him from his daughter, convinced him to sign over his assets, then he died suddenly of a heart attack 6 months later. His daughter Grace tried to fight it, but had no evidence. Crystal disappeared with over $400,000. "Can we help Grace now?" I asked. With Daniel's evidence, Nevada authorities have reopened their investigation. Grace may finally get justice. Sullivan handed me a business card. "This is Thomas Parker, your business partner now. He wants to meet with you this week. The company is doing very well. As 50% owner, you'll receive quarterly dividend payments of approximately $50,000. That's after taxes and operational expenses. $50,000 every 3 months. $200,000 a year, plus the life insurance, plus the business value itself. I'd gone from homeless to secure in the space of 1 hour. "What about the house?" I asked. "The house is more complicated. Daniel transferred the deed to Crystal before he understood what she was doing. That transfer was legal. However, the district attorney is moving to freeze all of Crystal's assets pending the outcome of the criminal case. If she's convicted, the house could be considered proceeds of a crime and subject to forfeiture. You could potentially sue to reverse the fraudulent transfer. But honestly, Mrs. Hartley, that process could take years and cost tens of thousands in legal fees." Marcus spoke up. "Maybe that's okay. Maybe Zoe needs a fresh start anyway." Sullivan nodded. "That's a reasonable perspective. In the meantime, Mrs. Hartley, you need immediate funds." The life insurance will take approximately 4 to 6 weeks to process. But I can arrange for the business to provide you an advance against your first dividend payment. Would $5,000 help right now? $5,000. I thought about the $8 in my pocket. Yes, that would help. I'll have a check ready for you tomorrow. Where should we send correspondence? I don't have an address right now. Sullivan wrote something down. I'll handle everything through my office for now. Come back Wednesday at 2. I'll have the advance check and paperwork for you to sign regarding the business and life insurance. Marcus and I left the office together. Outside, the sun was shining. It felt wrong somehow. The world looked too normal for everything that had just happened. I'm taking you to lunch, Marcus said. A real lunch. You need to eat. We went to a diner downtown. I ordered soup and a sandwich, the first real meal I'd had in days. We sat in a booth and tried to process everything. Daniel knew, I kept saying. He knew she was killing him and he couldn't stop it. He tried. He documented everything. He made sure you'd be taken care of. He should have gone to the police sooner. He should have left her. He was scared. She controlled everything. People don't understand how hard it is to escape when someone has that much power over your life. We finished eating. Marcus drove me to a hotel, a nice one. Nothing like the Starlight Motor Lodge. He paid for 3 nights with his credit card. I'll pay you back, I promised. I know you will. Get some rest, take a shower, sleep in a real bed. I'll check on you tomorrow. The hotel room was clean and quiet. I took a long shower, washing away days of dirt and fear. Put on clean clothes, lay down on a bed with actual pillows, and slept for 14 hours straight. Tuesday morning, I woke up feeling physically better, but emotionally devastated. I called Dr. Martinez's office and made an appointment for that afternoon. He examined me, adjusted my blood pressure medication, and listened while I explained everything that had happened. The stress should decrease now, he said. With proper medication and reduced anxiety, your heart should recover. But Zoe, you need to talk to someone, a therapist. You've been through a terrible trauma. He gave me referrals. I promised I'd call them. That afternoon, my sister Helen called. Her voice was small, ashamed. Zoe, I saw the news. About Crystal's arrest. About the will. I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have helped. Part of me wanted to tell her it was okay. But it wasn't. You abandoned me when I needed you most, Helen. You chose to believe a woman you'd known for 2 years over your own sister. I know. I was wrong. Can you forgive me? Eventually, maybe, but not today. I need time. We agreed to talk again in a few weeks. Maybe we could rebuild our relationship. Maybe not. I wasn't sure I cared anymore. Dorothy from church sent flowers to the hotel with a card. Please forgive my terrible judgment. You were always a good friend and I should have stood by you. I appreciated the gesture, but I didn't call her back. Not yet. Wednesday, I returned to Sullivan's office. He had the check ready, $5,000. I stared at it, this piece of paper that represented security. There's been a development, Sullivan said. Crystal made bail last night. $500,000. Her family in California put up their house. She's out? For now. But there's an ankle monitor. She can't leave the county. And Mrs. Hartley, you should know that she's been formally charged. 7 felonies. The trial will probably be in 6 to 8 months. What about the murder charge? That's still under investigation. The police found a receipt in Crystal's email trash. She paid someone named Rick Donovan $2,000 cash 3 days before the accident. They're looking for him now. When they find him, they'll have their murder case. I left Sullivan's office and went directly to First National Bank, opened the safe deposit box with the key Sullivan had given me. Inside was everything Daniel had promised, a flash drive with evidence. Letters to me, his handwriting shaky and scared. Photos he'd hidden of us together throughout his life. My mother's jewelry that Crystal had claimed was lost. I sat in the private room at the bank and read every letter. Daniel apologizing. Daniel explaining how Crystal had isolated him, convinced him I was sick, manipulated every situation. Daniel describing his fear when he realized what she was capable of. Daniel begging me to forgive him, to fight, to survive. One letter stood out. Mom, I think she's going to kill me. I found rat poison in the pantry. My coffee has tasted strange lately. My car keeps having problems, even though I just had it serviced. I'm documenting everything, but I don't know if it will be enough. If you're reading this, it means I failed to stop her. I'm sorry. Please make sure she pays. Please make sure no one else suffers like we have. I love you. I'm so sorry I wasn't a better son. I cried there in that safe deposit room, surrounded by the remnants of my son's fear and love. Thursday, I met with Thomas Parker at the company offices. He was a kind man in his 60s, with white hair and warm eyes. He'd been Edward's best friend and business partner for 40 years. Zoe, I'm so glad you're here. Daniel loved you so much. He was devastated when he realized what Crystal had done. He came to me 2 months before he died, told me everything, made me promise to look out for you if anything happened to him. You knew? Not everything. He was afraid to tell me too much, afraid Crystal would find out. But enough. I knew he was in danger. I tried to convince him to leave her, to go to the police. He said he was handling it his own way. Then the accident happened and I knew. I just knew it wasn't an accident. Thomas showed me around the company, introduced me to employees, explained the business operations. You don't have to work here if you don't want to, he said. You can be a silent partner. But if you'd like to be involved, we'd welcome your input. Edward always said you had a better head for business than he did. I decided to come in twice a week. Not to work exactly, but to learn. To feel connected to Edward and Daniel. To honor the legacy they'd built. Friday, Detective Barnes called. Mrs. Hartley, we found Rick Donovan. He sang like a bird the minute we arrested him. Crystal paid him $5,000 total to cut your son's brake lines. He confessed everything. We're adding charges. First-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation of murder. With these charges, Crystal is looking at life in prison without parole. Will she take a plea deal? Her lawyer tried. We said no. The DA wants this to go to trial. Wants to make sure she never hurts anyone again. Life in prison. It should have felt like justice. Mostly, it just felt sad. Over the next few weeks, my life began to stabilize. I found an apartment, a small 2-bedroom place on the quiet side of town. Furnished it simply, made it my own. No memories of Crystal or loss. Just a place to start over. The life insurance money came through. $750,000 minus taxes. I put most of it in investments. Kept some in savings. Donated $50,000 to establish a foundation in Daniel's name. The Daniel Hartley Foundation for Elder Justice. It provided legal aid to elderly victims of financial fraud. Free lawyers, investigators, support services. Everything I'd needed and couldn't access. Our first client was Grace Holloway from Nevada. With the evidence Daniel had gathered, we helped her reopen her father's case. She recovered $230,000 from insurance settlements and Crystal's frozen accounts. She cried on the phone when I told her. Your son saved my life, she said. I was going to end it. I'd lost everything and no one would help. Then I saw your story on the news, and I had hope again. Thank you. Thank you for being strong enough to fight. 3 months later, a letter arrived at my apartment, forwarded from Sullivan's office. It was from a woman named Grace, but not Grace Holloway, a different Grace. Dear Mrs. Hartley, I saw Crystal's photo in the news and had to reach out. She did to your son what she did to my father. She married him, stole everything, and I believe she killed him. His death was ruled an accident, but I never believed it. The police wouldn't listen to me. I lost my inheritance, my father's house, everything. I was about to end my own life when I saw your story. Please, please make her pay. For Daniel and for my father. Thank you for being strong enough to fight. I couldn't. Another victim. Another family destroyed. I called Detective Barnes immediately. He contacted authorities in the city where Grace's father had died. With Daniel's evidence showing Crystal's pattern, they reopened the investigation. Crystal had left a trail of bodies and broken families across 3 states. Daniel's evidence was the key that unlocked all of it. 4 months after the will reading, the trial began. I attended every day. sat in the front row and watched as prosecutors presented Daniel's evidence, the forged documents, the fake medical records, the emails discussing Operation Golden Goose, Rick Donovan's testimony about cutting the brake lines, financial records showing Crystal's systematic theft. Crystal's defense was that Daniel had been paranoid, that she'd been a loving wife trying to help a troubled family. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. The sentencing was 2 weeks later. I gave a victim impact statement, talked about Daniel, about Edward, about the life we'd built, about the pain of betrayal, about the importance of believing victims, of investigating financial elder abuse, of not dismissing concerns just because someone is old. The judge was a stern woman in her 70s. She looked at Crystal with disgust. "You are a predator who destroyed families for personal gain. You manipulated, stole, and murdered without remorse. This court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." Crystal screamed as they led her away. Screamed that it wasn't fair, that she'd been railroaded, that she was innocent. As she passed my seat, she looked at me one last time. Her face was twisted with hate. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not relief. Just emptiness. Daniel was still gone. Edward was still gone. Money and justice couldn't bring them back. But I was alive, and I had work to do. 6 months after Crystal's sentencing, I sat in my garden and watched the roses bloom. I'd bought a small house, nothing grand, a 2-bedroom cottage on the south side of town. The garden was my favorite place. I'd planted roses in every color. Red ones for Edward, who'd given me red roses on our first date. White ones for Daniel, who'd been innocent and pure as a child. Yellow ones for hope. Pink ones for new beginnings. The Daniel Hartley Foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We'd helped 23 families in 6 months. Elderly victims of financial fraud who had nowhere else to turn. We provided free legal representation, private investigators, and emotional support. Every person we helped was a testament to Daniel's final gift. Thomas Parker stopped by on Thursday afternoons now. We'd have tea in the garden and talk about the business, about life, about Edward and Daniel. The company was thriving. I'd learned more about software development in 6 months than I'd learned in my entire life. I enjoyed going to the office twice a week, enjoyed feeling useful and connected. Marcus had become a close friend. Maybe more than a friend, though we were taking things slowly. He came over for dinner on Sundays. We'd cook together, talk, watch old movies. Sometimes we didn't talk at all, just sat on the porch and enjoyed the quiet. After everything I'd been through, quiet was precious. Helen and I had rebuilt our relationship, slowly and carefully. She visited once a month. We were polite, affectionate even, but the easy closeness we'd once had was gone. Maybe it would come back eventually, maybe not. I'd learned that some things, once broken, never quite fit back together the same way. The community treated me differently now. With respect, even admiration, I'd become something of a local hero, the elderly woman who'd stood up to her abuser and won. Churches invited me to speak about elder fraud prevention. The police used my story in training sessions. The local news had done 3 stories about the foundation. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a survivor. There's a difference. Crystal was in a maximum security prison 400 miles away. I'd received 2 letters from her in the past months. Didn't open either one. Threw them away unopened. I had nothing to say to her and no interest in hearing her justifications or apologies. Grace Holloway, the woman from Nevada, had become a volunteer coordinator for the foundation. She flew in once a month to help train new volunteers and work with families. She'd found purpose in helping others the way we'd helped her. We'd become friends, bonded by shared trauma and shared mission. On a Thursday in late April, almost a year after Daniel's death, I drove to the cemetery, brought fresh flowers for both graves. Edward's stone was older, weathered by 8 years of seasons. Daniel's was still new, the granite shiny and stark. I sat on the grass between them and talked. Told Edward about the business, how well it was doing. Told Daniel about the foundation, about the families we'd saved. Told them both about the life I was building. different from before but still good. I forgive you, I said to Daniel Stone. You were manipulated by someone evil. You tried to fix it. You did fix it, in the end. You saved me, even though you couldn't save yourself. I'm so proud of you for fighting back. I'm so sorry you didn't have more time. A young woman was sitting by a grave 3 rows over. I watched her for a moment. She was crying, shoulders shaking with grief. She looked lost, alone. The way I'd looked a year ago. I stood up and walked over slowly. Excuse me, are you okay? She looked up, tears streaming down her face. My husband just died. Car accident. His family is trying to take everything. They say I'm not really his wife, that our marriage wasn't valid. They're kicking me out of our apartment. I don't know what to do. I sat down next to her on the grass. What's your name? Sarah. Sarah, I'm Zoe. I run a foundation that helps people in situations like yours. Would you let me help you? Her eyes filled with hope. Really? Someone can help me? I pulled out a business card for the foundation and handed it to her. Call this number tomorrow morning. Ask for Grace. Tell her I sent you. We'll get you a lawyer. We'll fight for you. I can't afford a lawyer. It's free. That's what we do. We help people who have nowhere else to turn. She stared at the card like it was a lifeline. Why? Why would you help me? Because someone should have helped me when I needed it. Because you deserve to be heard and believed. Because you're stronger than you know, and sometimes we all need someone in our corner reminding us of that. She hugged me, this stranger in a cemetery. Thank you, she whispered. I drove home as the sun began to set. Thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd found. Thought about Daniel's final letter, the one I kept in a frame on my dresser. His last words to me. Fight, Mom. Survive this. Make her pay for what she's done. I'd done all 3. I'd fought. I'd survived. And Crystal had paid with her freedom and her future. But more than that, I'd found purpose. I'd turned the worst experience of my life into something that helped others. 23 families. 23 people who didn't have to suffer alone because Daniel had been brave enough to document the truth. My phone rang. Grace. Zoe, we just got contacted by a woman in Arizona. Her mother is being financially abused by a caretaker. Can we take the case? Absolutely. Start the intake process. 24 families now. I pulled into my driveway and looked at my little house with its garden full of roses. It wasn't the house I'd lived in for 40 years. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was mine. Built from the ashes of loss and betrayal. Built on the foundation of my son's love and sacrifice. Life can take everything from you in an instant. People you trust can betray you. The system can fail you. You can lose your home, your money, your reputation, your sense of safety. I know, because it happened to me. But here's what I learned. You cannot lose yourself unless you give up. Resilience isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up every single time, even when you don't think you can. It's about taking the pain and turning it into something meaningful. It's about helping others climb out of the same hole you fell into. I lost my son. I lost my home. I lost nearly everything. But in losing it all, I found something I didn't know I had. Strength, purpose. The absolute certainty that I mattered, that my story mattered, that my voice deserved to be heard. Crystal took so much from me, but she couldn't take the most important thing, my will to survive, to fight, to live fully, even after devastating loss. Daniel's last gift to me wasn't the money or the business or even the evidence. It was the truth. And the truth, no matter how painful, will always set you free. I'm 68 years old now. Most people my age are thinking about retirement, about taking it easy. But I'm just beginning the most important chapter of my life. Every family we help, every voice we amplify, every victim we empower to fight back, it's all part of Daniel's legacy. He died trying to protect me. Now I live trying to protect others. For Daniel, for Edward, for every person who's ever been knocked down and told they don't matter, we all matter, and we will not be erased. Have you or someone you love ever faced a situation where you weren't believed, where the system seemed stacked against you? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Remember, sharing your experience might help someone else who's going through the same thing. You never know whose life you might touch. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video. It helps more people find these stories, and maybe, just maybe, help someone who needs to hear that they're not alone. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about resilience, justice, and the power of never giving up. And please share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is let others know that survival is possible, that justice exists, that hope is real. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for bearing witness to what happened to Daniel and me. Thank you for being part of a community that believes victims, that supports survivors, that refuses to look away when people are hurting. May you find strength in your own struggles. May you find people who believe you when others don't. May you find purpose in your pain. And may you never, ever give up, because you matter more than you know. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, the truth will always find its way to the light, even when the darkness seems overwhelming. You just have to hold on long enough to see it.